to the man who was once the most feared figure in all of hip-hop. But here he is now, Suge Knight, a former rap powerhouse, collapsing in court, where he's facing a murder charge.
The verdict was unanimous and unexpected. South Africa's Supreme Court calling Pistorius' original jail sentence inappropriate and raising it.
Fame and fortune can open doors, but when the law catches up, not even celebrity status can save you. Some of the biggest names in Hollywood have stood before a judge to hear their fate. One case stands out: an Olympic hero turned convicted killer. When Oscar Pistorius was sentenced, his breakdown in court stunned the world. What really happened? Let's dive into these crazy celebrities reacting to shocking sentences.
There, with the drawer open, just as it was, there were pictures on the bureau, the death pictures of Lana Clarkson, the very bloody pictures of her sitting slumped in the chair. There were several views of that.
He was very charming and he was very intelligent. He was incredible with the musicians, but he was also difficult with the musicians. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he was very controlling. He was very manipulative.
Phil Spector was a music industry legend, a producer who shaped the sound of rock and pop with his famous wall of sound technique. But behind the genius was a dark and volatile personality. For decades, whispers of his explosive temper and love for guns followed him. Then in 2003, those whispers turned into a horrifying reality.
Phil got darker and darker the more he drank and drank, and he drank a lot.
On the night of February 3, 2003, Spector met Lana Clarkson, a struggling actress and former model, at the House of Blues in Los Angeles, where she worked as a hostess. Spector invited her back to his lavish Alhambra mansion, known as the Pyrenees Castle. Hours later, a single gunshot shattered the silence.
Like 5 o'clock in the morning, around 5 o'clock, I heard a noise.
When police arrived, they found Clarkson slumped in a chair, lifeless, with a gunshot wound to the mouth. Spector, standing nearby, muttered something chilling, words that would later haunt the trial. His driver, who had been waiting outside, also claimed Spector stumbled out of the house and made a shocking confession. But was it murder or a tragic accident?
Police were saying little else about the woman in her 20s found dead in the foyer of Spector's Hilltop mansion. A luxury car was in the driveway. Police say it was being held as part of the investigation.
As soon as he opened the door, I jumped, went like to the back door, and he was like standing in the door with the gun in the hand.
Spector had a long history of controlling and threatening women, especially when they tried to leave his home. Rejection was something he couldn't handle. Prosecutors argued that when Clarkson tried to leave that night, Spector snapped, just like he had in the past. But this time, instead of threats, he pulled the trigger.
One of rock and roll's legendary music producers is a murder suspect tonight. Right now, Phil Spector is out of jail after posting $1 million bail. He's accused of shooting a woman to death in his suburban Los Angeles home.
Spector's defense argued that Clarkson had taken her own life, saying she was despondent over her struggling career. But prosecutors painted a different picture, one of a powerful man who refused to be rejected.
When there's a woman, alcohol, a loss of control, Philip Spector pulls a gun. And in those other incidents, you can almost think about it mentally like...
The trial uncovered a disturbing pattern. Several women testified that Spector had threatened them with guns in the past, especially when they tried to leave his home. These chilling testimonies sealed his fate. Spector's first trial in 2007 ended in a mistrial after the jury failed to reach a unanimous verdict. But in 2009, a second trial delivered the final blow.
Spector is being retried on a charge of second-degree murder in the 2003 shooting of actress Lana Clarkson. The first trial in 2007 ended with the jury deadlocked. Most jurors favored a conviction.
The jury in the above entitled action find the defendant, Philip Spector, guilty of the crime of second-degree murder of Lana Clarkson.
On April 13th, 2009, Phil Spector was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 19 years to life in prison. The once great producer, known for controlling every aspect of his music, had lost control of his own fate. His mansion, once filled with celebrities, became the scene of his downfall.
22.5a, the personal use of the firearm, the court selects the presumptive midterm of 4 years for a total of 19 years to life.
Spector's reaction was cold and silent. No outbursts, no remorse. He He simply stared ahead as if he were watching a performance he had no part in. His signature wild hair, which had been a bizarre spectacle throughout the trial, only added to the surreal moment.
On top of everything else, on top of the fact that the man seated to my right walked out within minutes of the gunshot going off and confessed, I killed her.
Lana Clarkson's family, however, was overcome with emotion. Her mother, Donna Clarkson, spoke directly to Spector in court, saying her daughter had been robbed of a future. The case sent shockwaves through Hollywood, proving that even the most powerful figures weren't above justice. Phil Spector's downfall exposed the dark reality behind his fame. But the next case, it's even more disturbing. A global R&B superstar who once ruled the charts, only to be exposed as a predator hiding in plain sight.
Prosecutors say 3 of the alleged victims were between 13 and 17 years old. Geronda Pace is one of them. In January, she told Dateline she began a relationship with Kelly when she was 16.
All of them. Got little girls trapped in the basement, helicopters over my house, trying to rescue someone that doesn't need rescuing because they're not in my house.
For decades, R. Kelly was one of the biggest names in R&B, selling millions of records, topping the charts, and shaping the music industry. But behind the scenes, dark secrets were brewing. Whispers of wrongdoing had followed Kelly for years, but he always walked free. That all changed when multiple people came forward, revealing a shocking reality of control, deception, and harm. The world had heard the rumors. Now, it was time for the truth.
R&B superstar R. Kelly has been arrested after being charged in Chicago with 10 counts of aggravated criminal sex abuse against 4 victims, 3 of them minors.
At the height of his fame, R. Kelly built an empire of control. His motive? Power. He craved absolute dominance over those around him, manipulating, isolating, and controlling them like pieces in a game.
An examination of how power can corrupt, how fame can conceal, and how society itself can enable a predator to thrive in plain sight.
Did you ever fear for your life?
Yes.
You thought he might kill you?
Yeah.
Your kids?
No.
Prosecutors described how Kelly used his wealth, status, and influence to recruit young fans who admired him, promising them opportunities, only to trap them in a disturbing cycle of control. He controlled their communication, dictated where they could go, and punished disobedience in ways that left many deeply scarred. For years, his status kept him untouchable. Some were too afraid to speak out, while others weren't believed. But as more stories surfaced, the facade began to crumble.
14 counts of child stemming from that infamous tape in which prosecutors say he stars.
Kelly's high-profile trial became one of the most explosive court cases in music history. His former employees turned against him. Survivors shared their stories, exposing how he had used fear and manipulation to maintain control.
Well, you know, if you love me, you won't try to change me. You know, if you love me, you'll accept me how I am. You know, if you love me, you'll do these things for me. So those would be the little pep talks he would give me.
The prosecution shattered his defense. They presented damning evidence, recordings, testimonies, and documents proving his crimes spanned decades. When the guilty verdict was read, the courtroom was silent. The man who once ruled the charts now faced a future behind bars.
R&B star R. Kelly has been found guilty in his trafficking trial in New York. The federal jury of 7 men and 5 women handed down their verdict a short time ago, convicting him.
But what came next? Even more shocking. In June 2022, R. Kelly was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The judge didn't hold back. This was about more than punishment. It was about accountability.
But we do begin tonight with singer R. Kelly, sentenced to 30 years behind bars after his conviction on racketeering and charges. Prosecutors accused him of leading a criminal enterprise of managers, bodyguards, and other employees to recruit and women, underage girls, and a teenage boy.
For Kelly, the motive had always been power and control. But in the end, that power vanished. The courtroom that once listened to his music now listened to his victims. And yet, Kelly remained defiant. He refused to take responsibility, attempting to appeal his sentence. But the evidence was too overwhelming, and his fame couldn't protect him this time.
The 55-year-old fallen star learned his fate after being convicted of racketeering and R. Kelly was dressed in dark glasses and a khaki shirt. When asked by the judge if he wanted to make a statement, he declined.
Inside the courtroom, survivors shed tears. Some spoke directly to Kelly, telling him that he had used his influence for harm, but he would never control their future. Their strength was undeniable.
The victims spoke about the sentence.
I never thought that I would be here to see him be held accountable. I stand here very proud.
Kelly, however, barely reacted. He stared ahead, emotionless, as if he still couldn't believe this was happening. For years, he had evaded justice, but now, his past had finally caught up to him.
If Kelly serves out his entire sentence, he won't be free until he's 85 years old.
On social media, fans were divided. Some were shocked that the music legend they once idolized had been hiding such a dark secret. Others said the sentence wasn't enough, that his actions had caused lasting harm. But one thing was clear: his reign of influence was over. A music icon's downfall exposed a world of control and manipulation. But the next case, it divided the entire nation. A beloved sports legend turned prime suspect in one of the most infamous murder trials of all time.
O.J. killed everybody in that driveway. Let's just, to hell with all this. O.J. killed both them people.
Simpson could not stay out of trouble.
Okay.
Simpson had an active social life and lots of friends. But on at least 4 occasions, cops were called to break up disputes between Simpson and his new girlfriend, Christy Prody.
O.J. Simpson was a sports legend, a Hollywood celebrity, and a household name. But in 1994, his reputation shattered overnight when he became the prime suspect in one of the most infamous murder cases in history.
A passerby discovered the victims on the floor, Brown Simpson at the foot of the courtyard stairs, and Goldman nearby, close to some vegetation. The murders would become one of the most notorious crimes in recent U.S. history.
On June 12, 1994, Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman were brutally murdered outside Nicole's home in Brentwood, California. Nicole was stabbed multiple times, her throat slashed, and Ron was viciously attacked. The crime scene was gruesome. Investigators quickly turned to O.J., Nicole's ex-husband and former NFL star. Their marriage had been volatile, with multiple reports of Friends and family recalled O.J.'s obsessive behavior, his jealousy, and how he couldn't accept Nicole moving on. Just 2 years after their divorce in 1992, Nicole had started dating again, and O.J. wasn't handling it well. Prosecutors argued that he saw Nicole's new life as an insult, a final loss of control, and that rage boiled over on that fateful night. As evidence piled up, things took a bizarre turn. Instead of turning himself in, O.J. led police on a slow-speed chase across Los Angeles in his white Ford Bronco, a live, televised event watched by 95 million people. When he finally surrendered, the case became a spectacle. His bloody glove, shoe prints matching the crime scene, and history of violence all pointed to guilt. But his high-powered defense team flipped the trial into a battle of race, police corruption, and fame, shifting focus away from the brutal murders. After 11 months of trial, the jury delivered its verdict on October 3, 1995. Not guilty. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Millions celebrated, while others were stunned, believing a killer had just walked free.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
Across the nation and around the world, virtually everyone watched as Judgment Day came swiftly for O.J. Simpson.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you one, so say you all.
Years later, O.J. wouldn't stay out of trouble. In 2007, he was arrested again, this time for armed robbery and kidnapping in Las Vegas. And in 2008, he was sentenced to 33 years in prison, finally facing justice, but for an entirely different crime.
O.J. Simpson stood shackled and stone-faced as a Las Vegas judge sentenced him for a hotel armed robbery.
The first-degree kidnapping with use of a deadly weapon, a fixed term of 15 years, parole eligibility beginning after 5 years.
Nicole Brown Simpson's family sat in disbelief as O.J. walked free, unable to find closure. For them, this wasn't just about a high-profile case. It was about justice for Nicole and Ron.
I will forever be proud of my son and my family. Thank you.
The public remained divided. Some saw Simpson as a victim of racial bias in a legal system. Others believed he got away with murder. The case forever changed how America saw celebrity justice, proving that when fame, power, and legal strategy collide, the truth can get buried beneath the headlines. O.J. Simpson's trial was one of the most divisive in history, but the next case is just as shocking. A world-class athlete, once celebrated as an inspiration, fell from grace in the most unthinkable way.
in his own country, he is a superstar like no other.
He was the guy that defeated all the odds.
When he ran, he set the truck on fire.
He wasn't just running to run, he was running to win.
For years, Oscar Pistorius was a global inspiration, a double amputee sprinter who defied the odds to compete against able-bodied athletes. The Blade Runner was a hero, a symbol of perseverance, until a single night shattered his legacy forever. In the early hours of Valentine's Day 2013, a series of gunshots rang out inside his Pretoria home. His girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, was dead, and Pistorius? He claimed it was a terrible mistake. But as investigators dug deeper, the truth became harder to ignore.
Early Thursday morning, neighbors in his exclusive gated community heard commotion and gunshots.
At this stage, we can confirm that a young woman, a 30-year-old woman, did die on the scene.
Pistorius told police he had mistaken Riva for an intruder. He claimed he heard noises coming from the bathroom, panicked, and fired 4 shots through the locked door, only realizing afterward that Riva was inside.
Did Pistorius know who was behind the bathroom door as he unloaded his gun? Or was he simply a man trying to protect himself and the one he loved from an intruder?
But the evidence didn't add up. Neighbors reported hearing a woman screaming before the gunshots, suggesting a heated argument had taken place. Ballistics showed Riva had been crouching behind the toilet, not standing or approaching the door. And then there was the history of jealousy and control. Messages revealed arguments between the couple, with Riva admitting she was scared of him at times.
After you fired the first shot, did she scream?
No, my lady.
Are you sure?
Yes, my lady.
Would you have heard her?
I don't think I would have heard it. There was a gunshot that went off, my lady. My ears were ringing.
Was this truly a case of mistaken identity, or a crime of passion fueled by rage? The trial gripped the world. South Africa's most celebrated athlete was now on trial for murder, breaking down in tears as the courtroom replayed the sounds of Riva's final moments. His defense team pushed the narrative of fear and paranoia, arguing that Pistorius believed an intruder had entered his home, and that, as a man with disabilities, he felt vulnerable.
One of the world's most recognizable athletes on the planet right now arrived at court under a blanket. A visibly humbled Oscar Pistorius faced the cameras again to hear the main police investigating officer say he didn't believe his explanation.
But the prosecution fought back hard, painting Pistorius as reckless and prone to violent outbursts. Then came the shocking twist. He was convicted, but not for murder. In 2014, Pistorius was found guilty of culpable homicide, the South African equivalent of manslaughter, and sentenced to 5 years in prison.
In the result, the sentence that I impose on the accused for the murder dolus eventualis of the deceased, that is Riva Steenkamp, is 6 years imprisonment.
The world was stunned, but it wasn't over. The prosecution appealed, arguing the conviction was far too lenient. In 2015, the Supreme Court overturned the manslaughter verdict and convicted Pistorius of murder instead. His sentence was increased to 6 years, but even that was met with outrage. Finally, in 2017, after yet another appeal, the sentence was doubled to 13 years and 5 months, bringing an end to one of the most infamous trials in modern history.
A South African court more than doubled the prison sentence originally imposed on Paralympic gold medalist Oscar Pistorius.
This court determined that the respondent, Mr. Pistorius, should have been sentenced to 15 years imprisonment.
Pistorius served time in Kosi Mampuru II prison, reportedly leading a quiet and religious life behind bars. Then, in January 2024, he was granted parole after serving half his sentence, a decision that left Riva's family devastated. In court, Pistorius was visibly shaken during sentencing, his once dominant presence reduced to a broken man. Riva's family, however, sat in silent grief. No amount of time would bring her back. Her mother, June Steenkamp, later said, "We're the ones serving a life sentence." As Pistorius walked out of prison in 2024, the world was left with one haunting question. Was justice truly served? A record-breaking athlete, a tragic crime, and a courtroom battle that divided a nation. But the next case, it involves a man who built an empire on power and fear. And when his sentence was read, he finally faced a fate he never saw coming.
Breaking news out of LA, a music industry mogul under arrest after a deadly hit and run. Suge Knight, a hip-hop figure who's had run-ins with the law in the past, is being held on $2 million bail.
Suge Knight wasn't just a music mogul. He was a feared figure in the rap industry. As the co-founder of Death Row Records, he shaped the careers of legends like Tupac Shakur, Dr. Dre, and Snoop Dogg. But behind the scenes, his reputation was built on intimidation, violence, and power plays.
Meanwhile, on Thursday night in Los Angeles, we spoke with Marion Suge Knight, head of Tupac's label Death Row Records, and the man who was driving the car sitting right next to Tupac when he was shot. Knight, who himself was grazed in the head by a bullet, was prevented by his lawyers from addressing the shooting itself.
For years, allegations swirled around Knight, links to criminal violence, multiple attacks, and even suspicions surrounding Tupac's murder. But it wasn't until 2015 that his criminal past finally caught up with him. A routine day on the set of the NWA biopic Straight Outta Compton turned into a deadly confrontation that ended one man's life and sent Knight straight to prison.
But with his ruthless kingpin image came allegations of very real criminal behavior. Violent shakedowns, brutal assaults, even murder.
On January 29, 2015, Suge Knight pulled up to Tam's Burgers in Compton, a spot tied to the filming of Straight Outta Compton. That's where he encountered Terry Carter, a local businessman, and Clay Bones Sloan, a former gang member turned filmmaker. Knight had a rocky history with Dr. Dre, who was closely involved in the movie. When Knight arrived at the set earlier that day, things got heated. Sloan and others allegedly told him to leave. Security removed him, but Knight wasn't about to let it slide.
The video obtained by TMZ shows the January 29th incident where Knight's truck apparently runs over the two men. The truck backs up, hits one man. Seconds later, the truck comes back.
A few hours later, Knight returned to Tam's Burgers, where Carter and Sloan were standing in the parking lot. Security footage captured what happened next. Knight's truck suddenly accelerated, slamming into Sloan, then running over Terry Carter before speeding off.
I seen Suge Knight turn around and go to his car. He ran him over twice.
Knight allegedly hitting the two men with his red pickup truck, then backing over them before leaving.
People we've talked to said it looked like it was an intentional act.
Carter didn't survive. Knight later claimed he feared for his life, saying he was ambushed and acted in self-defense. But prosecutors painted a different picture, one of a violent, unchecked man with a history of using brute force to get his way.
Overnight, music mogul Suge Knight turning himself in to Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies. Knight behind the wheel of a hit and run in Compton, California.
Knight's arrest set off a legal firestorm. He was charged with murder, attempted murder, and hit and run. Prosecutors argued that Knight deliberately ran over Sloan and Carter, knowing exactly what he was doing.
We're taking him to the hospital now, and the problem is still the blood clots to the lung, but it's really not being treated for the diabetes. You know, and it's just, I don't know why he hasn't been. I hope that they will, but there's nothing I can do about it.
The trial was chaotic from the start. Knight collapsed in court multiple times, claiming blindness, health issues, and mistreatment in jail. At one point, he was wheeled into the courtroom, looking frail and disoriented.
Here for disposition on one matter, sentencing on another matter. We'll start with the TA case. Matters here for sentencing. I've read and considered the transcript of plea, the report of the probation officer.
His bail was initially set at $25 million, later reduced, but still high enough to keep him behind bars for over 3 years while awaiting trial. In a shocking twist, before the case even went to trial, Knight agreed to a plea deal, pleading no contest to voluntary manslaughter.
Mr. LeBlanc, is that your understanding of the case settlement?
Yes, Your Honor, it'll be a no contest plea.
All right. Mr. Knight, is this what you want to do?
Yes.
A no contest plea is the same as a guilty plea. There's no difference. You understand that?
Yes.
With that, his fate was sealed. In September 2018, Suge Knight was sentenced to 28 years in prison, marking one of the longest sentences ever handed to a music mogul. The court handed down 22 years for voluntary manslaughter, with an additional 6 years added due to his prior criminal record. By the time he's eligible for release at 69 years old, the empire he built and the fear he once commanded in the music industry will be nothing more than a distant memory.
Pursuant to Penal Section 667, Subsection A, Subsection 1, the prior conviction the defendant has admitted, he is liable an additional 5 years in state prison for a total unstayed term of 28 years.
The sentencing left mixed reactions. Terry Carter's family expressed some relief, but heartbreak over the loss of their loved one. His widow and daughters sat in the courtroom, tearfully recounting the pain and devastation caused by Knight's actions.
Because ever since we went to court before we even buried him. So this has been a part of our lives since day one.
But Suge Knight, he showed little emotion. The once feared music mogul sat motionless, staring ahead as his fate was read aloud. There were no outbursts, no remorse, just a cold acceptance of the reality he had created.
Is that correct, Mr. Knight?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you wish to give up and waive your right to be present at the restitution hearing? Yes?
Yeah.
Very well.
His legacy in hip-hop remains tainted. Once a powerful figure, he became a cautionary tale. A man who had it all, only to throw it away with unchecked violence and ego. From music industry giants to sports legends, these celebrities thought their fame could shield them. But the law had other plans. And their courtroom reactions, they reveal the shocking downfall of the rich and powerful. Want more cases that left the world in disbelief? The next video on screen will take you even deeper into celebrity crimes that shook the world. Keep watching.